In keeping with our mission, we are pleased to be able to partner with organizations whose values dovetail with our own. This month, we are sharing the collection plate with The Place. The Place provides a safe 20-bed shelter for homeless youth between the ages of 15 to 20 years. The shelter operates 24/7 as the only licensed youth shelter in our city. They provide meals, clothing, healthcare, counseling, supportive relationships, and assistance with long-term housing placements. In January this month, the Launchpad, a 50-unit permanent apartment home, will open to homeless youth between the ages of 18 to 24 years, providing safety, secure support, and social services. All Souls will devote our plate sharing in January to support this effort, and our sponsor is the Economic Equity Team. If you wish to make an online donation, be sure to select Share the Plate from the drop-down menu. If texting, indicate dollar amount plus share. If your collection plate donation is a pledge payment, just write pledge on the donation envelope or the memo line on your check, and we'll apply your donation toward your pledge instead of the share. The offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you for your generosity. Come with me on a journey. I need you to participate. Imagine in your mind the opening theme of the 1966 original Star Trek series. Let that play in your mind. Is the music playing in your head? Now, hear the voiceover of Captain Kirk. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise, its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no human has gone before. So let's play with that a bit. Instead of Captain Kirk, imagine the voiceover of, say, Reverend Ron. Cue the music in your head. Change, anew All Souls. These are the voyages, journeys of the Starship All Souls UU, an intentional community of people from diverse life experiences, a plethora of ages, and a pluralism of belief systems. Its mission is to explore, to seek out new ways of being in an intentional community, to build a pluralistic congregation with love at its center, to go boldly into the future where none of us have gone before. Stardate 2023. The All Souls congregation was in the midst of searching for a new minister while coming out of the isolation of the pandemic. The High Plains congregation was in the midst of discerning whether to continue. The two came together with each wanting somehow to preserve their independent identity, yet boldly going forward to building a new UU presence together. Enter a new minister and multiple new people from across the city and country who found this congregation and brought their own experiences, hopes, and vision to this new intentional community. Stardate 2024. The new All Souls Starship had a larger crew, staff, and volunteers, and we needed to become acquainted with each other to learn how the various teams work to keep this starship operational and to trust the leadership of this new minister and his vision for us as a congregation. As in any enterprise, the beginnings can be a bit choppy as we learn to navigate the seas together. Stardate 2025. Be the change you want to see in the world. One lesson I am learning is not that All Souls has changed, but that I am changed when I engage in intentional community with the people in this congregation. I am changed when I listen and welcome the insights of those who are different from me. When I am willing to move from my comfort zone and boldly go into the unknown. Has All Souls changed in these last couple of years? Or have each of us changed because we choose this intentional community? Together, may we go forward boldly, seeking out new life and new civilizations.
As Kathleen offered her service leader reflection, I was relieved to look out among you and see no red shirts. It's a slow burn joke, I guess. All right. Red shirts always die in Star Trek, right? Okay, that's the joke. Okay. You're skirting the edge, my friend, okay? Okay, it's maroon. It's maroon. So, as you know, I'm a big believer that story and narrative act as a lens for our days. And at its best, the liturgical year ought to have a narrative march to it. And in some ways, that march should be the same from year to year. And in some ways, it should be different, right? It's a fundamental mission of religion throughout the ages to infuse time with meaning. As we maintain liturgical themes over time, we begin to generate a sense of depth. And this is something that's critically important to Unitarian Universalism in particular, is we sort of have a history of skipping on the surface week to week, fascinating topics and self-congratulating postures that don't really get us anywhere. So my theory is that if we repeat the theological or liturgical themes over the years, that we have the opportunity to go a little bit deeper. Now, on the other hand, each year will have its own needs and gifts. Consistency will not sacrifice novelty, but rather frame and hold the surprises that each year brings. Whereas last year I wanted to, in general, paint a picture of where I was coming from spiritually so that we could get on the same page a little bit, or at least we knew where we stood. This year I felt it would be best to ground into more congregational stuff, mission, covenant, and governance, while of course still hoping to ground all of that in spiritual connection and time infused with meaning. So, congregational stuff. Have we done this? Have we done enough of this on Sundays? Have we connected it spiritually to our days? So this service, today's service, is one where we look back at where we've been from September to now. And it gives us an opportunity to reflect on all that. And if this is your first Sunday here, lucky you, you get the whole fall and winter compressed into 15 minutes. So since September, I've reflected with you liturgically some 14 times. We began with water communion, wherein we take water as a simile for our community, a symbol of character, and a cherished substance in its own right, bringing us lessons both metaphorical and material. That Sunday, we observed that water is influenced by and acts as a medium for every context it comes in contact with. It is a medium for character, as is this community. We witnessed each other contributing our water as a symbol of our character into a collective substance, a mingled medium of soul and intent. And by our communion ceremony, we blessed our collected water by the meaning with which we infused it. This water is us. And so we are blessed by our congregation, our tradition, and each other. Now, one thing I learned from that ceremony that day was that aspen branches are poor flingers of water. We will go back to pine next year. And we've since used this water in various ceremonies and rituals here, including symbolically infusing it into the water that embraces and cleanses the stones of our sorrows and cares every Sunday. So the next Sunday, we explored one of the fundamental things that religion does, which is infuses the world with meaning. And the hypothesis that day became that meaning is itself also a medium rather than a fixed thing. That infusing meaning into the world, into an object or an event or relationship, opens a line of communication with the world that may subsequently evolve as conversations do. Meaning is dialogue, and dialogue is connection. So to run the experiment, we began playing with enchantment through items or beings impregnated with story and memory. In other words, we put a bird on it. We decided to feature one bird a month in our bone stories and reflections. And we chose birds mostly because they're not stationary. They may appear unexpectedly. They defy our intention and are multisensory. You may hear a bird without needing to see it. They ride unseen currents, and perhaps that is why cultures the world over regard birds as messengers from the other world. And so we leaned into the notion that birds are, as so many have recognized them to be, spirit guides, prophets, tricksters, and harbingers. We started with cranes, if you remember, and the story of the crane wife, who brought us lessons about promises, the consequences of breaking them, and the power of keeping them, and what can go awry when a mission is not shared. Crane spoke to us again the following week as we discussed mission and intention. We found their ultra-strong but incredibly light bones to be a good metaphor for governance. We likened our bylaws and policies to bones, without which we would be a worthless blob of religious yearning. Our policies might be best created as if they were like crane bones, strong but light, which in this analogy might mean not overly legalistic and wordy, but sound. That cranes mate for life, but engage in a yearly recommitment ritual centered on dance also spoke deeply to us of covenant, vulnerability, and renewing covenant, and how it is empowered by the safety to dance, to look a little silly, to be vulnerable, and unleash the creative power of a shared mission. Of course, we had neither operational covenant or mission at that time, so we embarked on crafting the latter, a mission, that very day. And in due course, a draft mission statement emerged, which we have been deploying in our meetings and services ever since, right? The mission of All Souls UU is to, does anyone have it committed to memory yet? Rooted in compassionate community, the mission of All Souls UU is to transformative justice to heal ourselves in the world. We'll get there. We close September with a nationwide UU Climate Justice Revival, where we read love letters to the future and utilized our sacred water and soil, communion soil, to mark each of us with a promise to work for the health of our ecosystems. I wonder, have we been keeping that promise? As the days began to grow short in October, we prepared to open the door to the underworld with the help of some blackbirds. And when Vasilisa visited Baba Yaga, it was helped through that ordeal by the blackbirds on account of her kindness. We found ourselves in similar circumstances. And just a note here, when I say underworld, when I've said underworld, when I say underworld, and when I say it in the future, I could just as easily be saying subconscious or spirit world or other worlds or dream world. For me, they are not always, but often enough, interchangeable. But given that October would culminate with presencing our ancestors, underworld, with its narcotic intonations, seems most fitting. So to prepare the ground, we made inquiry with death. We came away with 7 key understandings. Everything is interconnected. We don't see the whole picture. We do not know what we are. Free will is illusory. Time is not what we think it is. Awareness is memory. And we are the stories we tell about ourselves, given the sliver of reality that we perceive with the finite senses that we have. And in that story lies our hope and our responsibility. Therefore, if you want to change your life, change the story you tell about yourself, change your frame. And then I speculated on what happens when you die, because that was kind of the sales pitch that I would do that. And came away with, when you die, what happens involves the dissolution of numbers 2 through 6 of that list, until only 7, the stories, remain. And given that in that moment, while you're dying, time has become irrelevant because time has fallen away, the little mechanism that keeps track of it stops working, those stories last for eternity. In the end, the story you hold most true, consciously or subconsciously, will be forever. So it seems like something worth working on. We then told the story of ancestral healing and found that the trauma of our ancestors lives in us to this day. We found that just as it is hard to hear the wisdom of a Baba Yaga because she is so ferocious, inherited and epigenetic trauma obscures our view of a world otherwise rife with meaning and beauty. But we also found a portal in the pain once we understood that listening is healing. And so we listened to our ancestors in our own body. We listened to their pain and therein uncovered a blessing through connection. So this gesture toward healing opened the door to our All Souls service, where we met our ancestors in the ever-present underworld, received from them a boon, and then bid them farewell. Now, as we turn to the calendar into November, we found ourselves fully immersed in the underworld and welcomed the companionship of some burrowing owls while we were there. We avowed that in these uncertain times and in this unsettled period of the world, we would not be cowed by that uncertainty, but rather embrace it as a creative space. And we found that covenant was a reliable and clear place to take such a stand. And you all then contributed your thoughts to the creative process of covenant making, much as you had with mission. And all that covenantal input is still percolating. To my surprise, it's proven a more wily task than the mission creation. I'm probably just overthinking it, but also the process was interrupted to some degree by electoral events. Things got weird. Not good weird. It's opposite. In fact, this took a downright dangerous turn for some of us and for some of those we love and many who we don't know but love as a matter of course as we learned of the election results. But as we found, we are prepared for the weird. As we explored how to meet the coming days, we found that we would need to keep our poise in the midst of a contested or hostile historical era. We would need to find our equanimity and therefore courage outside of circumstance. For to protect and prevail as we must and will, we must now cultivate courage. And courage requires resolve. And for courage to stand against real consequences, resolve must be rooted in an equanimity, an assurance beyond circumstance. Whatever hope we have abides there, waiting to be mustered into action when needed. And that kind of rooting found ceremony the next week as we honored creative dormancy and conducted our soil communion ceremony. There we let go of what must decay to be food for new life. We all contributed soil and planted dreams into that community compost. That soil, those dreams, make the bed for our candles of inspiration and joy. It was good timing then, I think, to revisit the evolving concept of salvation the next time we met, and I offered up my litany of salvation, which goes as follows. Salvation is the experience of being free from the grip of fear. Faith dispels the grip of fear. Faith is a deep trust in life. Our faith testifies that we are all sacred and that everything is interconnected. Thus, we find freedom in faith. Now, this freedom manifests in our ability to respond rather than react. Reactivity is coupled with being held by the grip of fear, right? So our freedom manifests in our ability to respond rather than react, and the ability to respond rather than react depends on our becoming aware of our reactivity and rooting in our faith. And faith and awareness require practice. So what are these practices? Well, we identified that going to church was one. Seemed like a good time to reflect on how to church, as we did the following week. And we noted then that at church with each other, we can amplify, reify, and support our efforts to experience ourselves and one another and all others as divine. You are sitting in the midst of holy company. How do we cultivate that? How do we do that? As articulations of the holy flow, we can be pretty profane, after all. We can be petty and inattentive, spiteful, self-interested, and frightened, and that too can be amplified by company. So we grounded into our shared UU values, where it is stated that we are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. And we found that church, therefore, is a technique or a suite of methods. And it just so happens that one of those methods by which love comes to life are bylaws and policies as much as a hug, right? Bylaws and policies give us shape and create spaces of safety that hopefully reflect our values. And by practicing our mission as a guide for not only our congregation, but for ourselves, we found that All Souls UU and the people who comprise it can know what it is to be and act as poetics, making poetry. We can be the holy flow given bodies and the universe with a sense of humor. And then it was holiday season, and we welcomed that with tales and tunes, and a few days later with our solstice celebration and Christmas Eve. Now, I'd invited you to bring your home chalices to be consecrated by this company and its collective intent in a fire communion. And I'd never done that before. So I expected maybe a handful of you would have home chalices to bring. I was wrong. I think we consecrated something around 30 plus chalices that night. It was so many that I had to adapt the ritual from what I'd written mid-ceremony. It was awesome. You could use those chalices at home, right? On your dinner table or at an altar for your ancestors or in your meditation nook or your tarot spread. Hopefully all those Sundays that we've just sort of sprinted through, hopefully they hang together. Hopefully they form a kind of a trajectory, one of connection and safety and courage, and maybe just being reminded of what we've spoken about together on Sundays does something. I'll close today with the heart of the message from Solstice and Christmas as we conducted our fire communion and consecrated our chalices. You are life, and life is love, and you are love. You are the light and the dark and their dance. Your hands are the hands of the sun as it flows through plants and then through you. The template and temple of dreams. You are life, and life is love. You are love. As we leave this sacred time and place that we have created together, let us go forth, reflecting on where we've been. Like we just talked about Sundays, y'all. There are 6 different days in this week. This church is an amazing place that is accomplishing so much as a community and for the individuals who take part in it. So go knowing and carrying that in your heart, right? You're plugged into something special. This is our medium right here of connection. Let us go in peace. Let us go singing.
Give thanks to the